a secular Jew in Hollywood who hides behind anti-Semitism when it benefits them, but while they pervade filth across the world, when I call them out on that, am I an anti-Semite? They don't extradite their pedophiles. They have the largest homosexual population in Tel Aviv, in that region of the world. I know what happened to the USS Liberty. I know that was sunk by the Israelis. I know that was also permitted by President Johnson, that somebody who says it's health care allows a child to be taken from their parents, be given a double mastectomy, have their bodies mutilated and lied to that they can become a man even though they're a biological woman, and they call that health care? That used to be that if a pedophile went into a prison, they'd be killed. But now you're seeing them trying to normalize it and push it forward into the school systems, because that's the culture declining. Politicians are actors performing a script written by the audience. Oh, no, homosexuality is not wrong. The word and its nuance, and really, if you look at they just twist themselves in a pretzel exegetically to try to justify accepting homosexuality. Well, it's very clear, because they're adapting to culture instead of driving it. We want to be liked instead of honoring God. He translated this word correctly, and for the translation of this one word, the King of England had him hung and his remains burned. I have nothing to be afraid of. When they gave me death threats, and they keyed my car, and they threatened my family, I'm like, what do you threaten me with, heaven? In the absence of courage, truth is an orphan.
Rob McCoy is the senior pastor of Godspeak Calvary Chapel of Thousand Oaks in California. He's the son of a conservative naval officer father and a Republican activist mother. An All-American Water Polo player and a National Finalist Swimmer, he graduated from California State University Fresno with a bachelor's in history and received his seminary training from the Mennonite Brethren Biblical Seminary in Fresno, California. Prior to entering the ministry, he was the Divisional Manager with Unilever. He has served as the senior pastor of Godspeak Calvary Chapel of Thousand Oaks for 17 years. I believe it's even more now, right?
25 now.
25 years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Mr. McCoy has been a member of the Thousand Oaks City Council since 2015 and is the former mayor of Thousand Oaks, term starting in December of 2018. He served as a Ventura County Sheriff's Chaplain for 4 years and on the board of the Conejo Pregnancy Center. In 2020, Pastor McCoy stood up against the tyrannical and communist guidelines of California and kept Godspeak Church open. At the time, he identified himself as a pole dancer because strip clubs were open to the public those days.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I did. Well, I did a striptease I took my tie off on Sunday, and I said, we're a strip club, so now we're legal.
Rob is a family man. He is married for more than 30 years now. He is a father to 5 children and a grandfather to 5 grandchildren, correct?
6 now.
6 now. Wow. You have to update the information.
I will. I did, but you have the old one.
So
I'm sorry. I'll get you the new one next time.
I'm 36 years old.
Yeah.
Lithuania is a very small country. It's very religious. It's very Catholic. I won't say up to 90% of the religious people in Lithuania are Catholics.
Okay.
Those Catholics are very odd. What I mean by that. So I was baptized when I was a few months old, right?
Right.
We always celebrated Christmas, Easter, and etc. But we have never talked about God at all.
Wow.
I knew what Christmas is all about. I knew what Easter is all about, but it was never as a topic when we were dining.
Yeah.
I was always against God, always, as far as I remember myself. I have never been to church. I believe I want to say I've been to church only twice. The first time I went there when I was baptized, which I don't remember. The second time, I believe I just went in for a few minutes. Everything that I saw there, I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
Then I saw a few clips on the internet, how Catholic churches look like. I didn't like it at all. At the same time, I become a teenager and I become more of a heretic, right? I hate God. I hate Jesus Christ. I don't get it how people believe in this myth.
Yeah.
I always associated religion with God. I thought this is the same thing. I always thought that Jesus Christ and God himself is Catholic. This is the way to believe in Jesus Christ. Then I always read those stories of pedophilia. So in Lithuania, there were a few occasions that pedophiles, priests were caught. There was one occasion where a Lithuanian priest was caught with hookers in a sauna somewhere out of the city. They were riding big SUVs, etc. So in my mind, Jesus Christ, God is religion, equals Catholicism. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
In 2020, we live in Spain with my wife, and we were riding to our home country for a visit. And I was watching the US all the time. I was seeing all the transgenderism that is going on right now, the sexualizing, the weaponization of everything, and etc., the whole new religion. And I was asking my wife, what if God gives us this example of what the world can look like if we deny God, if we deny Jesus Christ? And that was the first time I thought about it. Then I watched a podcast of Dennis Prager, and he recommended the book, Still the Best Hope. Did you read the book?
No.
It's an amazing book about America, capitalism, and about God. I read the book and was like, so Jesus Christ.
This is good.
Oh, I know. So God is not about Catholicism. God is not a religion, it's something else. Then a few more podcasts, I dive into it. We got here to the US in 2023. I asked my fellow Lithuanian, which lives here for 20 plus years, can you bring us to church? She was like, yeah, okay. So we go to Westlake Village Church, Calvary Church.
Calvary community, yeah.
Yeah. So we enter the church and I hear the music. I was like, what is that? What do you mean, what is that? That's music. Like, what is that? Why are they singing? They're praising God. Why? We enter the hall, and there are drums, guitars, vocals. Yeah, and the music is amazing.
Yeah, they have great music.
This is a Christian music? Yeah. You can preach gospel like that? Yeah. So this is how you thank God and love God? Yeah, one of the many ways. And now that's how the journey started.
Okay.
Then we left Westlake Village. Almost 9 to 10 months we were out of the church. Then I got introduced to the church by AJ Hurley and Bryce Eddy. Godspeak, I fell in love. I watched you preach, I want to say 3-4 months now. That's why you're here, and I'm very happy that you're here.
I'm honored to be here, Paulo.
To have a conversation with you.
I got chills with your story.
Why?
It's very unique. I mean, I've been in ministry 35 years, and I've heard some amazing stories. That's an amazing story.
Thank you.
And like the Apostle Paul, when a man comes to faith, it's not always that his wife joins him. And your family is going to church together. This is a journey that you've done together, which speaks volumes to your relationship with each other. You're connected at every level. That's precious.
Thank you. 10 years ago, my mom got into a coma. So, just like I mentioned before, we weren't religious, but we celebrated just Christmas and Easter, right? Right before her getting into a coma because of the alcoholism, she was an alcoholic for 2 decades now. Then, a few months before that, she started looking for her Orthodox Greek church where she was baptized when she was a little kid. And I was asking her, why are you doing this? She couldn't answer me. I just want to find God. Like, why? I don't know. I want to find God. She found the church in Lithuania, and she went there, I want to say, 12 times. So after a few months, she got into a coma, 3.5 years in a coma, then she passed away. I just hope that that she found God in that church, and she's in heaven right now.
When we're willing, God is able. She had that desire in her heart. You trust in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. That's what the scripture says. She wanted to find that church. She wanted to reconnect with God. You use the term religion, and I want to maybe clarify something. Religion comes from the Latin relongare, I think is how you pronounce it. It means to reconnect. So we associate religion with all of man's failures, but the reality is it's man trying to connect with God. Every denomination gets something right and gets something wrong. But the beautiful thing is, in the purity and in the sincerity of it, you find the Lord. I have no doubt if that was your mother's heart's desire, God granted it. She knew where she needed to go, and she wanted peace, and she knew time was running out.
It's like she knew.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So when I watched European media, Lithuanian media, France, Spain, UK, doesn't matter. If you watch European media, you get a sense of that the US is all blue, it's all liberal and Democrat.
Yeah.
It's a very secular country. Once we got to the US, I found out this country is very conservative.
Very.
It's very red, and it's very God-fearing country. So all the churches, I want to say, are packed. We've been to multiple of them, and they're packed.
Yeah.
LA, Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks, it doesn't matter. We've been to Arizona to see Mark Driscoll last year. It was packed.
Yeah.
But if you watch the news, it seems like it's not.
Christianity's on decline.
Yes, which is not true, right?
The church denominations in America, Methodist, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, denominations are declining because their power is centralized in their denomination, and anything centralized typically is prone to being woke, and so they infiltrate the hierarchy and then push their issues down into the churches that are submissive to the denomination. Churches that are independent are typically not woke, and they're exploding in attendance. So yes and no. Denominations are in decline. Independent churches are on the rise.
What are your thoughts on Catholicism?
Well, I'm sitting across from a man that doesn't have a very strong opinion of it, I imagine. I struggle with Catholicism on the Eucharist, that they believe it to be the literal body and blood of Christ. There's, just like in the Protestant world, you've got really good churches and really bad churches. I have been in some amazing Catholic churches where the priest is not a pedophile. Mm-hmm. He is evangelical. He reads the scriptures and teaches his congregation the word of God. He proclaims the gospel. And so, and I look at Pope John Paul, who was used with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan to bring down the Iron Curtain. It was Pope John Paul, along with Lech Walesa and so many others in Poland, that stood in opposition to the communist regime. And when you see Pope John Paul's testimony in his life, you see a man that I believe he loved the Lord. I really do. Mm-hmm. And then my parents, I come from a Catholic family. I'm a Protestant minister from a Catholic family, but both my parents converted to Christianity through a Catholic priest, Father Michael Murphy, who is a very evangelical minister. He's outside the box. I have great respect for him. I do believe him to be my brother in Christ. Again, I disagree with the Eucharist. I don't believe that Jesus was speaking of the literal body and the literal blood. I struggle with those who worship Mary, deify her. I think that Catholics venerate Mary too much. I think Protestants don't venerate her enough. Because of women born of men, there's none greater than than Mary. She, her Magnificat is significant in the angel choosing her, but deifying her, no. Sinless, no. She was at the foot of the cross just like everyone else. And there's something to be said when you go back through church history. The word Catholic means universal. I think much of our early writings and the early church fathers held to much of that. But I think that when the Eastern Orthodox and Western Orthodoxy split, I hold more towards the Eastern Orthodoxy. I think it's healthier. Although even there, when you look at the Russian Orthodox, they're a train wreck in the former Soviet bloc. They've got some strong churches outside of that area. They don't look at the Eucharist the same. They don't look at the literal body and blood of Christ. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Do you have any explanation why there are so many percentage-wise pedophiles, priests in Catholics and almost none in Orthodoxy?
So the reason in church history that I recall, and I'm no deep scholar in church history, but the idea of the priest being celibate was the fact that in the early church, they would, and you can see this in the Protestant churches now if they get 50 years older, the pastor transfers it to his son. And so what happens is you have nepotism, and they keep the wealth within the family. Well, they were watching this in Catholicism in Rome. And so to stop that, they said that priests were to be celibate. So there couldn't be nepotism. Well, it's unhealthy that a man not be with a woman. Like the Apostle Paul said, if you can be like that, but there are few that can. The Apostle Paul was married. He had to have been, to be, I think, a Sanhedrin or a Pharisee, he had to have been married. And he says that you can divorce on 2 grounds, adultery or abandonment of marriage by non-believing spouse, meaning his wife didn't want to be with him anymore when he converted to Christianity. She left and he let her go because she didn't want to be with him. But he didn't remarry because he had the gift of singleness, but that's very few. And if you have a desire to be married and you don't have that access, that's problematic. And it leaves room for all kinds of troubles. So the infiltration of what I call the alphabet mafia, and this is just with an influx or the infusion of heavy pornography and what we've been faced with. Sexual expression comes out in deviance in many forms. And so what happens is, if there's not intimacy, and that's what sex is, it's an expression of intimacy, physical, emotional, and spiritual, and it's intended for the context of marriage. Outside of that, you have 2 people engaging in an act that doesn't bring them intimacy. And so in its debased form, you see abuse or anger. You attack the innocent, so then you go after children. And as the culture begins to decline, that used to be that if a pedophile went into a prison, they'd be killed. Mm-hmm. But now you're seeing them trying to normalize it and push it forward into the school systems, because that's the culture declining. And that's a result of this influx of sexualization outside of the bounds and the context of marriage. So yeah, the Catholic Church is prone to that. And they saw that, and so did the homosexual community. So they immediately came in and infiltrated. The homosexual community infiltrated the Catholic Church in many aspects. And it's just debased. And it's like any organization that was healthy at one point, but in the decline and the absence of making disciples, where the church has abandoned the public square. Organizations like the Boy Scouts, which used to be, this bridge into manhood, because for 13-year-old boys, a man is like, it's a mystery. And then you're welcomed in. It's like a bridge that men welcome you in. That's Boy Scouts. They teach you to be a provider and a protector. Well, that was infiltrated by the homosexual realm. And they bring it down through sexual promiscuity, and then they destroy it by lawfare. So Boy Scouts is on decline. Men's organizations are on decline. Rotary used to be just for men. Well, now you have women come in, and there's nowhere for men to gather. And every one of these areas that were established by Christian organizations with godly men, when you abandon the public square and you're no longer influencing the culture, which is what's happened to the church in the last 50 plus years, we've relegated Christendom to this one thing. We say, I don't do politics, I just preach the gospel. So we've caused the gospel to be myopic, and we've truncated it, meaning we just talk about the death, burial, resurrection of Christ. If you believe in your heart, confess with your tongue, Jesus is Lord, you will be saved to the glory of the Father. And I don't want anything to come in the way of people hearing the gospel and responding to the gospel. I don't want politics to get in. I don't want to address topics that are dicey that may turn someone away from the church. Well, Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. The sword is truth. It's the word of God. Word. And pastors are peace-loving by nature. And they think, sadly, that peace is the absence of conflict. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of Christ in the midst of the conflict. We contend for truth, and it's not going to be popular. A missionary goes where he's not loved, but needed. And he leaves when he's no longer needed, but loved. And that takes time. You by your own admission, Apollo, disdained Christianity. You hated it. Mm-hmm. And the people that ministered to you, they were your enemy. But at some point, the truth took hold of your heart, and they were there, and they understood. You can revile me, you can insult me, but like the Apostle Paul said, I have been crucified with Christ. You can't insult the dead man, and we love the unlovable, and we go where we're not wanted. But what's happened in churches today is they want everyone to be, welcomed and wanted, and we don't call out sin, we don't address issues, and that doesn't do anything for culture. We don't drive culture in the church today. We adapt to it. Andrew Breitbart?
No.
You'll do a study on him. He's died, but he's the one who started Breitbart News. He was one of the first to take on the legacy media and to really go after the truth. And many believe he was killed. But Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream from culture, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians are actors performing a script written by the audience. Well, that's culture. Politics is downstream from culture. Christianity should be driving culture. But sadly, Christianity has adapted to culture just like politics has. So pastors put their, lick their hand or lick their finger and put it in the air and see which way the wind's blowing, and they adapt to it. And then they bend the word of God to acclimate to the culture. Oh, no, homosexuality is not wrong. The word and its nuance, and really, if you look at they just twist themselves in a pretzel exegetically to try to justify accepting homosexuality. Well, it's very clear. And then the transgender movement. You can't be any more clear than Genesis. He made them male and female. There's two genders. A man will never become a woman, and a woman will never become a man. It just will never happen. You can mutilate their bodies. You can lie to them and tell them otherwise, but it will never happen. You take 100 biological men, I think it's XY chromosome, 100 biological men, and take 50 of them and put them through full transformation, and put 50 and 50, put them on an island, and then take 10 biological males and 5 biological females, XX, XY, and put them on an island. Come back in 100 years on this island with the 50 biological males and the 50 transitioned, the island's going to have a pile of bones. Mm-hmm. The other island will have a robust population. But pulpits in America justify this because they're adapting to culture instead of driving it. We want to be liked instead of honoring God.
But you Americans were always bold. You were like Texans. When I was living in Lithuania, I was watching all the TV shows, Americans' music, listening to the music, movies, Hollywood, etc. You were always bold to me. You can stand up to the ideas that are right. You could stand up to the communism and say, this is not it. We're not doing this in America.
You injected Texas bold. Yeah. Sadly, during the lockdowns, Governor Abbott in Texas didn't facilitate or didn't demand like Governor Newsom did that the churches were non-essential. But the churches in Texas complied to the COVID restrictions. They closed their churches and they did everything by video. There were maybe a handful of churches, but they had freedom. We were going to be put in jail here in California. In Texas, they had the freedom to remain open, and they didn't. So what's happened is, and you know this with Yuri Brezmenov, there's been an intrusion where they've infiltrated the American culture. Communism has, and the last vestige is the church, where they're going to attempt to demoralize the church. So as you see the book written by Megan Basham, Shepherds for Hire, they have come into the Southern Baptist Convention. They are in every seminary, every Christian college. These folks are paid off by Soros aggregates, many of his surrogate NGOs or whatever it is in his multi-universe of, tentacles that reach into every vestige of culture. And they're all paid off. They're for hire. And the tragedy is when the church became a business model, which is what's called the seeker-sensitive movement, we went from we went from proclaiming the truth and raising disciples to a business model where it was no longer congregants, it was giving units. And we wanted to figure out how to keep as many people in the church as possible so we could build the buildings. You read in Revelation what a healthy church looks like. Nowhere in Revelation does it say that it's the buildings or the budget or the baptism. A healthy church is dictated by its love and speaking the truth in love, but it's a balance. We are so into the business model of buildings and budgets and building a name for ourselves, and where it becomes almost idolatry. It's problematic. You've been going to Godspeak for how long?
Since June.
Have I ever passed an offering bag?
Never.
Have I ever asked you for a dime?
Never. That's one of the points why I didn't like the Catholicism. Catholic churches, they were always passing this bag for the money, and they're saying, like, don't throw the coins. The God does not like the sign of coins. So just...
If the text talks on giving, I'll talk on giving. But we go through the Bible in the Anchored Reading series. I don't talk on it to do a building budget or, some sort of event we're doing. The church in America has found a way that there's no bigger stick to hit someone over the head with than God when you want to get money out of people. And that's problematic in and of itself. Now, some of my closest brothers in the body of Christ would disagree with me, and I would say in their defense, they don't fleece their sheep, but they do pass an offering bag because they want to give people an opportunity to worship, and they see that as an act of worship, which we do too. We pray over the offering, but we don't. It's just not one of those things where we're continually talking about the need. The Bible says, "Don't let your need be known, but to God." And if if the pastor's going in front of the church saying, "Hey, you know what? We got to make budget this week, and this is where we are, and this is where we have to," that's not scriptural. Granted, there were those that would give offerings to Jerusalem because they were aware that there were a lot of widows there, because during the persecutions, their husbands were all massacred. And the Apostle Paul would take an offering, and they would purpose beforehand, as you read in 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, 1 and 2 Corinthians, you'd read about it. And so that was above and beyond that. But the church has become a business, and it's problematic.
So speaking of Corinthians and especially Paul, I have this problem. So right now I'm in the New Testament and just read the 1 Corinthians. Apostle Paul writes, "Let your women keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but they are to be submissive, as the law also says. And if they want to learn something, let them ask their own husbands at home, for it is shameful for women to speak in church." Why?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of ways to look at that passage. My position on it was, and when you exegete a text, you go into context. And the context of it, when you look at everything that they were dealing with, their approach in Corinth was a woman couldn't even testify in a court of law. She was less than a human in a sense. So the idea that they now have this freedom in Christ and they're created in the image of God, and that, the Bible says it says in Ephesians, the epistle in the Ephesians, Paul says, submitting to one another in the fear of God. It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. Children, obey your parents. It'll go well with you. You live long on the earth. But it does begin with submitting to one another. And it's the first time in any religion in the early world that this is the case. And all of a sudden, they're rising up and having opinion. Well, and also in the absence of men as they're being persecuted, they were taking the roles of leadership. But it's very clear in Ephesians that it's God, husband, wife, children. Not because children are less than, or a wife is less than, or even a husband is less than. It's the ones that are the weakest have the most levels of protection. A child has a mother, a father, and God protecting. A wife has a husband and God. The husband has God. You remove the husband, the wife still has God covering, which is sufficient. It'll work, but it's a lot of work. And any single mother out there will testify, I wish I had a helpmate. I wish I had a husband. I wish my children had a father. She's still getting the job done, but it's not ideal. Mm-hmm. So in this case, these women were rising up and taking positions of authority within the church. And he's saying, let them remain silent. and that he's not to instruct. You're not going to hold the pulpit. There are some in America, like certain Baptist churches, women are not permitted to preach. Now, I'll allow a woman to come and speak from the pulpit with the covering of her husband. If she's coming up and she's sharing a topic outside of the scriptures itself, where let's say we have a candidate running for office and she's a woman, she's welcome to stand behind that pulpit on a Sunday morning and share what it is she's come to share. I've even had James Lindsay, Dr. Lindsay, who was a professing atheist but now is an agnostic. He's come and he shared on a Sunday, which to many would be an anathema. Mm-hmm. But he's staying in his lane, which he's talking about critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he's not pretending to be a Christian. He's not falsely presenting himself. He's dealing with a topic that the church is ignorant of. And so, of course, I welcome him. So some churches take this literally. Their women wear head coverings. Yes. You'll see that in the Mennonite Brethren, the Anabaptist movement. You'll see that in some Pentecostal movements. Even Apostle Paul says that you have to cover your head if you're a woman, right? Yeah, because the hair was the glory of a woman. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I don't see as it translating into modern day. And there's a lot of other ways I could go through that. I'm not fully prepared to discuss it, but Apostle Paul was not one of the 12, right? He met Jesus Christ. That's a great one. That's a great one. So to be an apostle, you had to have met the Lord. Yes, right. He did. But when he wasn't alive anymore. But did he meet him? He did. He did. And he says of that, I was one abnormally born. And what he's saying is, when they chose, after Judas died, after he hung himself, they chose who? Peter, I want to say? No. So obscure you don't even remember his name. And you wonder, and they did it by drawing lots. Well, God had already picked a replacement in Paul. And he had already visited him. He'd already had a call upon his life. He took him to get his, what I call BSD degree, the backside of the desert. He equipped him and fully blessed him. And so when Paul, and a lot of folks will disagree with me on this, but when the Apostle Paul says about the thorn in his side, and he said, I prayed many times to have it removed. Many believe he was maybe crippled or he was blind because he had been stoned, had rocks thrown at him. He'd been shipwrecked, left for dead. They believe that the thorn in his side was some sort of a physical ailment. I believe the thorn in Paul's side was the fact that the other apostles didn't recognize him as the replacement for Judas. So you want to tell me that Jesus Christ gave him the authority to speak on behalf of Jesus Christ? Because he's saying you shouldn't have wife, but if you can't, you should. That's me saying it, not God. He will qualify when he's speaking on his behalf and when he's speaking on the Lord's behalf. You'll see that in the text. Speaking of Israel, so I'm obviously not a Jew. I'm a Lithuanian, but I'm a Christian. Can you explain me? I always see those videos on the internet. When in Israel, especially in Jerusalem, you can see Orthodox Jews, they hit on Christians. How is it possible? Why do they do that? And why do they tolerate that? Yeah, the Jewish people are peculiar to me in many respects. Can you rephrase that? What does it mean? Peculiar, odd. Mm-hmm. I've been to Israel 22 times. I am a defender of the sovereign borders of Israel. On October 7th, their sovereign borders were invaded by Hamas. They have every right to be at war right now. In the same respect, I also believe that they are God's chosen people and they have the oldest land title of any nation on the face of the earth. So they have the rights to that land. Now, the question is, blessing Israel, is Israel a border? Is it a blood type? Mm-hmm. Or is it a faith? And what is a real Israelite? A secular Jew in Hollywood who hides behind anti-Semitism when it benefits them, but while they purvey filth across the world? Is that it? When I call them out on that, am I an anti-Semite? When I support Israel, and I do, and I defend Israel, which I do, but I also call them out that they have the highest abortion rate of any Western nation. Their IDF forces, a female in the Israeli Defense Forces, permitted 2 abortions during their service in the IDF. They don't extradite their pedophiles. They have the largest homosexual population in Tel Aviv, in that region of the world. There's much that is disgusting about that, but I still support Israel. Is it a blind support? No, not at all. I know what happened to the USS Liberty. I know that was sunk by the Israelis. I know that was also permitted by President Johnson. I'm aware of all those things, and they're despicable. But nevertheless, God says to defend Israel. He says to stand with them. I don't stand with their atrocities. I don't blindly support them, but I do believe they have the oldest land right, the oldest title deed of any nation on the face of the earth. What's fascinating to me in the 22 times I've been to Israel is the growing population of what I call Messianic Jews.
Christians, basically.
Well, I call them completed Jews. They're still Jewish, but they're completed. They have realized their Messiah has come, and they've embraced him. That being said, Israel would never, for many years, allow a right of return for a Messianic Jew. They could prove their lineage through their mother's side, but because they professed to be a Messianic Jew, they weren't permitted a right of return. That's changed.
Messianic Jews, they believe in Jesus Christ.
They believe Jesus Christ is their Messiah. And so this is growing. It's a growing population in Israel. I personally, in my walk with the Lord, I'm defending Israel for the sake of those Messianic Jews. I believe them to be God's chosen people.
Do you think we can criticize Israel?
Oh, absolutely. And we must.
And it's not anti-Semitic?
Not anti-Semitic. Just like I can criticize America, and it's not anti-American. I want the best for Israel, and I want the best for America. And if you're wrong, I want the best for you. And as my brother in Christ, if you're doing something wrong, I'm going to call you on it.
Of course.
Because I wouldn't love you if I didn't. Right?
That would be hypocrisy.
That's right. Truth without love is brutality. Love without truth is hypocrisy. Speak the truth in love.
So I have a problem when people, especially you Americans, say Judeo-Christian values, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with that. Because Judaic values are based on the Old Testament, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you take the Old Testament, especially the first 5 books by Moses, those are brutal books. You have to stone gays, adulterers, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why if you read the Bible, you have to read it completely. Start with the Old Testament, and then Jesus Christ arrives with the New Covenant. That's a whole another religion, I want to say.
Yeah, there's a whole sect of Christendom where they get this dominionist from, where they want to re-implement the
Moses' law,
the Pentateuch. Yeah. When our founders spoke of Judeo-Christian ethics, what they're speaking of, and this is out of Matthew 16, where Jesus, they're getting ready to cross the Galilee, the disciples and Jesus. Jesus says to his disciples, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And in Mark 7, he adds, and of Herod. And all the disciples say, did we not bring enough bread? And Jesus says, really? I mean, you don't remember the 12 baskets that were left over with the few loaves and we broke and blessed? He says, not, and they realize it's not about bread. He says, it's about the doctrine of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and of Herod. And then they cross and they head up to Caesarea Philippi, which is the headwaters of the Jordan. Resplendent park-like settings, one of the most beautiful places in Israel. I love this place. And every culture that's dominated the region has set up a temple to their god or goddess in this region. Well, at the time, Rome's occupying. They have their knee on the neck of the Jewish population. They command the region, and they probably have a temple set up to Bacchus, the god of alcohol, and Aphrodite. And there's probably drunken nudity going on because that's where you go to the park. And these Orthodox Jewish boys are looking at all this, taking it in. And Jesus, in the cacophony of noise of pagan worship, says, who do men say that I am? They go, well, some say you're John the Baptist, others say Jeremiah. And he says, but who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And upon this rock I will build my, and everyone says church. That's not the word. Church didn't come till hundreds of years later. As a matter of fact, in the first English-speaking Bible from the original language, written by Tyndale, he translated this word correctly. And for the translation of this one word, the King of England had him hung and his remains burned. Jesus didn't use a religious term. He didn't say synagogue for synagogue. He didn't use the word temple. He deliberately used a secular word.
Tabernacle?
Ecclesia or ecclesia. And it had been in use for hundreds of years. Aristotle translated, the etymology of it is real simple. It's where the Greek city-state would gather for the affairs of the city. And above the door, they'd have eleutheria and isonomia, liberty and equality. I wonder where our founders got that. And they would gather to decide the welfare of the city. So Tyndale translated assembly. It goes further. It better translated public square, city hall. So now look at the passage, Matthew 16:18. Upon this rock I will build my city hall, and the gates of hell, which enslave, will not prevail. And here's where I'm going with this. Gates enslave, right? In the 6,000 years of recorded history, two classes of people have ruled the masses, priests and kings. Even in Egypt, priests and kings, the hocus pocus, all the magic, and the king would oversee the priest, and the priest would do the bidding of the king, and they would control the masses. 6,000 years of recorded history, kings and priests rule the masses. And Jesus, at the beginning of Matthew 16, says, beware of the leaven, the doctrine of the priests and the kings. And what he was saying is, establishing civil law apart from the moral law is leaven. I'll explain. You had 3 to 5 million people who were enslaved in Egypt, right? And they cried out to God for a deliverer. God sent an 80-year-old man by the name of Moses. Moses confronts Pharaoh and obeys God and says, let my people go. Pharaoh, who's a tyrant, he's a king and he has his priestly class, and he is a tyrant, and he's using humanity as a saddle to ride. Pharaoh responds to God's command by saying, who is God that I should obey him? Because every tyrant thinks he's God. So he doubles the brick output and reduces the materials on the Israelites. And what do the Israelites do? The 3 to 5 million crying out for freedom. What do? They want to kill Moses. People want freedom. They just don't want to have to suffer for it. Well, it doesn't matter, because one man in God constitutes a majority, because God is the majority. So God brings the 10 plagues on the Egyptians, the final one being the Passover, which is the angel of death, which kills the firstborn. Pharaoh loses his son. He finally relents and lets these 3 to 5 million slaves go. As they're exiting Egypt with the wealth of the Egyptians, Pharaoh realizes he's losing his slave economy, so he sends the entire Egyptian army to bring them back. They have mountain ranges on either side, the Red Sea in front of them, and the Egyptian army descending on them. They get their back up against the Red Sea, and these 3 to 5 million Jews complain again to Moses. Moses prays, the Red Sea is parted. They have complete clarity on their walk through. The Egyptians are in abstract darkness and confused. The Israelites get to the other side, and God drowns the Egyptian army. Now they get into the wilderness, and they're there for 40 years. God provides food every morning. Their shoes don't wear out for 40 years. Their clothes don't wear out for 40 years. They complain about meat. He blows quail off course, right? Water comes from where there wasn't water. He speaks to the rock, hits the rock, water. Yeah. But here's the greatest miracle, Apollo. Moses goes up on Mount Sinai, and God gives him a downloaded moral app, the Decalogue. One God, no idols, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain, honor the Sabbath day, honor your mother and father. Those first 5 are our relationship with God. Now the second 5 also includes number 5. Don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, and don't covet. Moses comes down from Mount Sinai. The entire nation of Israel is in a rave party, golden calf. Yeah. He rebukes them and teaches the children, the grandchildren, and places it in the center of the community. And here's the greatest miracle. 3 to 5 million people live together for 40 years without a police force or a standing army. From the moral law comes the Pentateuch, the civil law. From the moral law comes the civil law. If you remove the moral law and just use the civil law, that's the leaven of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herod. The law is no longer the wise restraints that will make you free, meaning if you apply restraints towards evil, if you don't murder, you don't steal, you don't covet, you don't lie, your culture isn't going to need a police force because people are going to be moral. Those wise restraints that make men free, you apply restraints towards evil in order to pursue excellence, right? You're a weightlifter. When people your age are out drinking and partying, you're taking care of your body and eating right, and you're lifting every day, and you don't get the physique or the weight that you're seeking to accomplish, or the awards, if you don't apply restraints towards what the rest of your generation is doing by getting fat and out of shape. Athletes understand applying restraints towards evil in order to pursue excellence. Any parent understands this. Because when your child, Richard, wants to do something that's not good for him, you say no, because freedom is having choices. If you apply restraints towards evil and pursue your education, which is hard, you're going to have more opportunities. You're going to have more choices, and more choices equals more freedom. That's what Thomas Jefferson said, our founder. Freedom is having choices. So from the moral law comes civil law. But if you remove the moral law, which allows the law to be the wise restraints that make men free, then the civil law becomes a weapon to enslave. You are non-essential. The church is non-essential. Your business is non-essential. Jews must be killed. Whatever it is, there's no moral law anymore. So now you get to make the laws, and man is innately sinful, and that's problematic. So yes, the Pentateuch, our founders, interestingly enough, the number one book quoted by our founders was the Bible. Of any other book, the number one book of the Bible quoted was Deuteronomy, because they searched the civil law to formulate, and this is one of the reasons why churches have tax-exempt status. There's a reason why we have 3 branches of government out of Isaiah 44. The Lord is our king, our lawgiver, and our judge. Executive, legislative, judicial branch. Due process came out of the scriptures. Trial by your peers. The republic came out of Jethro saying to Moses, appoint godly men, love God, who aren't covetous, they don't steal, and they love the law. Appoint them over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Federal, state, county, local. It is fascinating what they glean from it. Now, as you apply these restraints that make men free, Galatians 3 says the law is a school teacher, a guardian, to point us to Christ until faith comes. And then I'll close with this. It's a long talk, I'm sorry, but it has to all come out because it's a train of thought. In Matthew 22, Jesus says, when confronted by an attorney, he said, what's the greatest commandment? He says, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. The second is like it, to love your neighbors yourself. And on these 2 commandments hang the law and the prophets, the entirety of the Old Testament. So we're to love our neighbors ourselves. A question would be, wouldn't you want your neighbor's children to grow up in truth and understand there's 2 genders and not be lied to by the masses, that somebody who says it's healthcare allows a child to be taken from their parents, be given a double mastectomy, have their bodies mutilated and lied to that they can become a man even though they're a biological woman, and they call that healthcare? That here in California, you can rip the baby apart in the womb of its mother, but you're allowed to harvest the organs and especially the heart on the downbeat of the heart? And we call that healthcare? Wouldn't we want our neighbor to be able to grow up where they're not fearful of losing their business because it's non-essential? We have to contend for the welfare of our neighbor. Jeremiah 29:7 says, pray for the peace of the city in which you dwell, for in its peace you'll have peace. We're called to be in politics. Politics is the highest form of community. And the word politics isn't poly meaning many and ticks meaning blood-sucking parasite. Politics is polis, which means the affairs of the city in which you dwell, Jeremiah 29:7, contending for the welfare of your neighbor that you're to love like yourself. and to do good for them. Politics is the highest form of community because it combines morality with sociability. If God didn't intend us to be in politics, he would have never have designed marriage. You have two opposite people with agreements on how to get along and live through life. Everything is going to have rules of engagement, and we're contending for that. And so, yes, the Pentateuch seems harsh to us today, but there are valuable lessons in it to be gleaned from, like our founders realized. But whatever civil laws we establish on the earth must first be filtered from the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. That's the beauty of what God gave us.
So when I read the Bible, you have to know a lot of context, right?
Yeah.
According to the Bible, the humanity is 6,000 years old, right?
If you're a young Earth person, well, I can say 6,000 years of recorded history. Many believe the Earth to be about 10,000 years old.
Yeah, but scientists claim that only humanity is like 300,000 years old. What I want to say is, let's take 100 years ago. We didn't have any, for instance, any intelligence agencies, right? No CIA, MI6, and etc. No Mossad.
How many years ago?
100 years ago only.
There were organizations that you look at Machiavelli in Italy, and they had secret societies. They've been going on for a while.
Yeah, but not that big.
Well, no, you didn't have the technology you have today, right?
Name me the earliest star, celebrity, singer, artist that you know. Who would that be?
The earliest?
Yeah.
All right. We can go all the way back to Bach. You can go back to.
Was he the artist? Could he do a concert? Like Elvis, for instance, or Dean Martin, or Sinatra?
Well, if you look at Whitefield, when he was preaching in the Eastern Seaboard, he would have audiences of 25,000 people without magnified sound. And Benjamin Franklin paid for the auditorium for him to preach this when the First Great Awakening occurred.
So 150 years ago, humanity invented, let's say, telephone, right? Telegraph telephone,
sure.
Then video camera, then plane, something around 100 to 150 years. Mm-hmm. So if the scientists tell us the truth that humanity is 300,000 years old, but we did those inventions only in the last two centuries, how is it possible? What happened? Did we awake some kind? What happened in those 100 to 150 years ago that we did this kind of a big leap in the technologies?
Yeah, this isn't my area of expertise, but I lean towards a young Earth position. As a history major, I see 6,000 years of recorded history. I see large leaps in technology at certain moments, and I think that as there's a rapid information accessibility. So, for example, to contain in a library in the 1800s a series of books to have access to required that you leave your house, you drive to the library. Now, in your home, you probably have the Bible. You have some of Mark Twain's works. You'd have Grant's memoirs of the Civil War, which were the two most popular books that they had put out at the time. Farmer's Almanac, but you'd have to go to a library to have access to it. I have more information on my iPhone and access at any moment than all of history combined. Just sitting there in an instrument in my hand.
Yeah, and we're glued to TikTok and Instagram Reels.
Right. No, I understand that. We used to look at the stars to get our direction. Now we look at a phone. We look down instead of up. We used to look to the Lord to find the stars and guiding us in the night sky, but now we look down for our direction.
So would you say majority of humanity right now is smarter than it used to be 1,000 years ago?
No, because think about this. Can you look up at the night sky and direct yourselves through the ocean at night?
No way.
Yeah, but they could.
They could read this and understand this. They could read Shakespeare.
Yep.
It's impossible to read the Shakespeare right now. It's very hard.
The beauty of the language back then was you said what you meant and you meant what you said. Articulation, grammar was so critical. German is a language that's technical. It's wonderful for engineers. The English language and the nuance, the English language save the Western world. When Winston Churchill gave his speech, Never, Never, Never Give Up, the only word he used that wasn't English was a French word. It was surrender. It's like the two things that the French have invented is the tourniquet and the white flag. But he deliberately used the language in such a profound way. But you're right. We're not smarter, but we have access to more technology. But we've become lazier. We're dependent. And that's exactly, instead of being dependent on God, we're dependent on man. Technology, I'm not a Luddite, which a Luddite is a word of folks that feared technology. I'm not a Luddite. Technology is neither good nor evil. It's dependent on who's operating it and who's using it. We're watching a centralization of technology to control the masses. But in the same regard, you have folks out there that understand the value of free speech. And so you've got folks like Elon Musk, who's actually, I think, on a journey, probably coming close to the Lord. This is a guy who has 9 children from different women. But because he understands the value of freedom of speech, he's starting to go back to what is the root of that? Where does that come from, and why is it critical? What is logos? What is rational thought? How is it that there's the laws of nature and nature's God, that there's rules in the universe? And any rational man who is truly seeking will find this. That's why you see Russell Brand coming to the Lord. You see folks that if they're in a pursuit for truth, they're going to find God at the end of that equation. And so you get a guy like Elon Musk who has Skylink and he wants to use that for God, for good. You have other folks like I'm thinking of Trilogy Studios in Dallas, where for blockchain technology on the internet, if we're going to use if we're going to be driving and we're going to have a self-driving car that has to read all the elements and be able to keep the car where it needs to be and take in everything around it. If snow starts to fall, that computer has to generate an understanding of every flake that's falling and understand what it is. And that has to go back to a server located somewhere that's burning immense amounts of power, and they have to be cooled by a river. Mm-hmm. And then that comes back. But the human brain barely burns any energy and can comprehend and work through the snow falling, and immediately we can ascertain what that is and navigate. We're not even remotely close to where God's design has come. And men think that they're God, and that's a problem. But when you get men who've been humbled, and they do things for good, like Cyrus. Cyrus was humbled. Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. Men who are over authority, who stop deifying themselves and start realizing they're under authority of God and want to do things morally, that changes the world and sets men free.
But do you believe in Elon Musk? Because he looks like Antichrist from the Revelations. And everything that he owns, for instance, Tesla, I own a Tesla.
Yeah.
He can switch it off right away.
I don't own a Tesla.
So he owns...
I don't want the radiation on my body.
He owns the Neuralink, right?
Yeah.
Neuralink can be an implant. That would be the mark of the beast. He owns the X.
Like I said, are you afraid of technology or the ones who control technology?
Maybe there's just too much power in one hand.
Well, then how? See, this is self-fulfilling prophecy of much of the church that is pre-trib, premillennial in their eschatology. We get to a place where we think the Antichrist is God's equal in evil. We think the devil is God's equal in evil. He's not.
He's not.
And government isn't greater than God. And we look at the immensity of it. We see how evil is infiltrated in every vestige of society. And it's always been there, and it will always be there. But our apathy and inactivity, where we decide not to participate in the political process because we say that it's compromised and it's rigged. You know why it's compromised and rigged? Because good people haven't been in there defending and protecting it. They're apathetic, and they justify their apathy by their eschatology and their inactivity. And they sit back and they call balls and strikes on history while they don't do anything to change it. And my God, who I serve, is a God of hope. And there is always a way. He has the ability to make a way where there doesn't appear to be a way. He's greater than government. He's greater than evil. He's greater than all of the tyrants on the face of the earth. And he says to us, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. Instead, what we do is we look at the immensity of the problem and we look for every reason why not to participate, because it's already too evil. We give up. That's the problem of looking at the horizon instead of keeping your eyes on the Lord, the author and finisher of your faith. It says in Isaiah chapter 6, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple with glory. Isaiah realized that when this king died, he was the hope of Israel, and he's dead, and everyone's lost hope. But he's saying, when he died, I didn't lose hope. I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple with glory. We need to get our eyes off the problems that are paralyzing us and put them back on the Lord who's inspiring us. The story of the grandpa and the grandson walking on the beach after a great hurricane has just hit, and the storm is receded, and the skies are blue, and the water's calm. But all the starfish from the storm have been washed up on the beach, hundreds of thousands of them as far as the eye can see, and they're dying in the sun. And the little grandson picks one up and puts it back to save it. And he picks up another one and throws it out to save it. And the grandpa says, you're wasting your time. There's too many of them. You'll never make a difference. And the little boy looks at his grandpa and he says, I'm making a difference for this one. And I'm making a difference for this one. And the grandpa joins him, and the output is now exponential. Get your eyes off the horizon and fix what's in front of you.
So basically, vote locally as well.
Yes.
That's where it starts.
Yes. I spend the majority of my money in an election. My wife and I tithe to the church, and we tithe 10% every election, and 80% of that tithe goes to local elections.
Because this is what matters.
I'm responsible. The Bible says, pray for kings and those in authority that we would live quiet and peaceable lives in all godliness and reverence. And I ask pastors as I traverse the country, name your 5 school board members and your 5 city council members in your community by name. Of course, you're praying for them by name, and the issues that they're dealing with that would allow the citizens that you are responsible for in your circle of influence to live quiet and peaceable lives in all godliness and reverence. You can hear a pin drop because they don't know their local leaders. And that's where you make the biggest difference.
Yeah, you've been the mayor of Thousand Oaks. Thousand Oaks, I want to say, is 30 miles from LA, right?
Yeah, it's the 13th largest city in California.
So Los Angeles is
the wealthiest per capita.
Los Angeles is basically Gotham without Batman. Thousand Oaks is an amazing city. Every time we go to Thousand Oaks, that's safe. I know that when I go with my family, I can not look over my shoulder to see whether there is a thief or someone else.
Very safe.
So vote locally.
Yep.
Minimum.
Yep.
And then vote in the general elections as well.
You certainly should be in attendance at your school board meeting. When the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself, you should be contending at the school board for your neighbor. At the least, are they going to be taken from their parents' home because their parents don't want them to go through transition surgery or be given hormone blockers that won't even be given to serial rapists in prison because it's considered inhumane?
Yeah.
Are you going to contend for your neighbor? Are you going to have your congregation contend for your neighbor? That's what God has commanded. Love your neighbor as yourself. Locally, you can do that. Sitting at the city council meeting and contending for businesses where they're going to lose their business, and you're contending, you understand the concerns of the citizens within your community. Oh yes, that's exactly where we need to be.
So I became a Christian, but as far as I know, the main purpose of the Christians is, for instance, for me, is to spread the gospel, so when the day comes, they will not get the mark of the beast, because there are only 2 signs that you will not go to heaven, right? If you blaspheme the Holy Spirit and if you get the mark of the beast. These are the only 2 options when you don't get to heaven, correct?
Yeah.
So we have to inform others, inform non-Christians when the time comes, the beast arrives, not to get that mark, whatever it may be. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
No, you're not missing anything. I mean, that's a clear eschatological approach to pre-trib, premillennial for many people. I don't lay awake at night worrying about that. It just doesn't burden me. Meaning this, if I can give someone the ability to discern between truth and a lie and never be afraid of the consequences of standing for the truth, I guarantee you don't have to worry about them having a mark of the beast. Are you, and do we get to a place where they come in to take a blood sample and then they inject you with some sort of microchip? And they go to test your temperature and they inject you with some sort of microchip. They put it in the food and it travels. I mean, you can come up with 1,000 different scenarios to be fearful of whatever technology they've come up with. And all of a sudden now I've got the mark. Is the mark meaning you can't buy or sell? Well, there's always a black market. My question is, are you afraid? Is the decision you're going to make based on the fear of the consequences of standing for truth? They already had a mark in Nazi Germany. The Jews did. They couldn't buy or sell. And you know why they were able to do that in Germany? Because good people, moral people, did nothing. Mm-hmm. They were too afraid of telling the truth and standing for the truth. It wasn't Hitler and his victims. It was Hitler and a complicit nation that lied to each other, lied to their friends, lied to their enemies, lied to their coworkers, lied to their boss, lied to their workers, lied to their loved ones because they were too afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. And less than 9% of Germany were even Nazis when they took it over. So that was brought down. Fascism was destroyed. Power wants to concentrate. God wants to put power back into the hands of the people. And the idea is, in the absence of courage, truth is an orphan. Make men and women of courage. You'll never have to worry about the mark of the beast. It's not to lay awake at night going, I wonder how they're going to inject me with that. It's who's going to control you. The fear of man is a snare. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I'm not going to lay awake at night trying to contemplate all the nuances of technology, and I'm going to instruct my children on discerning truth and having courage to stand no matter what, and to let them know that they're more than conquerors in Christ Jesus, and that God hasn't given them a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, and that they're immortal until God's done with them. And you have nothing to be afraid of, because even if they kill you, it's not death. You fall asleep and awaken in the image of the Lord with a brand new body eternal in the heavens. If you're born once, you'll die twice. But if you're born twice, you're only going to die once. And that death is just falling asleep and waking up alive, where you begin to truly live. I have nothing to be afraid of. When they gave me death threats and they keyed my car and they threatened my family, I'm like, what do you threaten me with? Heaven? Is that all you got? It's the only weapon the enemy possesses is fear. And the way to overcome it is just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of man. Be afraid of the Lord.
Joshua 1:9.
Yeah.
Do you believe in rapture?
Yeah, I do. But I don't know the day or the hour, and it's a minimal part of the scriptures. It's not my focal point. It's a tertiary topic. It's not one of the main tenets of the Christian faith. I don't see any reason to divide over it. And I don't see any reason to centralize my life on it. Every eschatology, meaning study the end times, comes with an asset and a liability. The asset for pre-trib, premillennials, we're very evangelistic because we think the next thing on God's day planner is the rapture. So basically the house is on fire. We got to get the kids out. So we're going to tell everybody about the Lord. The liability is we don't build anything lasting. We don't have any schools of higher learning or universities that we've built. We just don't build anything lasting. We don't have anyone sitting on the Supreme Court because we don't believe in higher education. And, it's just like, hey, bro, we just preach the gospel. We don't do politics. Well, that's a nation grows great whose citizens, whose old people plant trees of the shade they'll never know. We're not really planting any trees. We're just, hey, the world's going to hell in a handbag, and we got an exit button. And we're looking upward. Well, the Lord says, occupy until I come. That means do Do work. The Apostle Paul said, if there be no resurrection, I of all men would be most pitied, because the life I'm living as though it matters. Make sense? Shake you up a little bit.
So if you read Matthew 24, you get scared. I got scared.
Yeah.
Because everything that is depicted right there is scary.
What you're one with is what you're one to. If you're one with fear, you'll be stolen with fear.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the churches that folded during the COVID crisis. They were one with fear. How did they get them to shut down the church? With fear. God won me by kindness that led me to repentance. I already knew I was hopeless. And now, I don't have anything to be afraid of. I'm his. My name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And I can walk through this earth with his authority, his word of truth, the confidence, and his grace and mercy. And we're as bold as lions, gentle as, was it doves, but man, I love seeing in my children courage. Courage is the absence of fear. We're all afraid, but courage is doing the right thing in the midst of that fear. You stand. If the Lord won me with fear, I can be lost by fear. He won me by his kindness and his love, and he holds me by that. Now, the fear of the Lord is a reverential respect. I'm not afraid of the Lord because he's going to condemn me. He who has the Son, the scripture says, has life. He who does not have the Son does not have life. I've told you this so that you may know you have eternal life. Apollo, if you can lose eternal life, was it eternal to begin with?
No.
No. So that you may know, gnosko, so you may know you have eternal life. So there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And the Bible says, forgetting what is behind, striving for what is ahead, taking hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of you. And I go, but Lord, what about all the things I've done? And the Bible says in Psalm 23, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I go, Lord, what about all the stuff I just did 2 days ago? He says, look, and you turn around and there's goodness and mercy with brooms, and they've swept it all up.
That's the whole point of Christianity.
That's right.
To be forgiven.
And not just forgiven, he casts your sins as far as the east is from the west to be remembered no more. Now, if he casts it as far as the north is from the south, we have a problem. Because if you leave the North Pole and you travel south, when you get to the South Pole, what direction are you traveling? North.
Yeah.
Right? If you're traveling south and you get to the South Pole, now you're traveling north. When you travel east, when do you reach west? Never.
Mm.
There's no West Pole.
Yes, because there is no pole.
Because that's the beauty of it.
What kind of movies do you like?
Movies?
Yeah. Do you like what kind of genre?
I like war movies. I like historical war movies. I love Band of Brothers. I love Pacific. I love anything dealing with American history. I like when I see dramas. I'm a little sappy. I like It's a Wonderful Life. It's probably my all-time favorite movie.
Do you like sci-fi?
Do I like what?
Sci-fi.
I do. Yeah.
Have you ever had this feeling, just getting outside, watching at the stars, and feeling that your home is somewhere right there?
Yeah.
Why? Why humanity is so fascinated with sci-fi, other planets, space, and we're not the only ones that have had this feeling that our home is not here but somewhere over there?
Yeah, Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, he's also a mathematician. He said every human is created with a God-shaped void.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a jigsaw puzzle, and when it comes to the heart, only God fits there. Nothing else fits there.
Mm-hmm.
We try to fill that void with anything but God.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible says man is being created subject to vanity. Meaning we look up at the night sky and we realize that there's nothing on this earth that can satisfy us but the Lord. And so we look up. When a child cries, it cries for something greater to help. And as mankind the two great truths of the universe. There's a God, and we are not him. When we understand that, and people say, no, I'm a self-made man. And I always say, what part of yourself did you make? Who keeps your heart beating at night and your lungs moving when you sleep? You say, well, I've never seen God. Well, I've never seen the person who built this apartment or the studio. I've never seen him, but I can tell by order and design that there is one.
I've never seen the value of a dollar, but we just believe that it's worth
that's,
a dollar.
That's fiat. Yeah, but the reality is we know there's a designer. And the universe screams of a designer. We are held on nothing. And even the scripture said the sphere of the earth back before Columbus discovered that the earth is round. The scripture said the sphere of the earth. And we're held on nothing in space. I mean, that's fascinating. We're 93 million miles away from the sun. If we were 5% closer, we'd burn to death. If we were 5% away, we'd freeze to death. This delicate balance, and this is one solar system in the Milky Way galaxy, which is billions, and then there's billions of galaxies, and God holds that in the span of his hand, between his middle finger and his thumb. And we look at the immensity of it, and you think, especially in LA, we talk about visibility. Oh, it's a good day. I can see about 10 miles. Oh, I can see Catalina when I'm in Santa Monica. That's great visibility. Let me tell you about really great visibility. How about at night where you can see billions of miles away to a star? And that's where you start to realize the expanse of the universe. It almost looks like holes in the floor of heaven. And then I remember Phil Donahue. You don't know who he is because you're only 36. He was a talk show host. He asked the great Billy Graham, he said, Dr. Graham, with the billions and billions of galaxies in the universe, you mean to tell me that this is the only planet where there's life? And I love Dr. Graham's response. He says, I don't know the answer to your question, Phil. I do know this. For God so loved this world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. He cares about this planet. He has every hair on our head numbered. A sparrow doesn't fall from the sky without his full knowledge. We've been created in the image of God. This is why the secular progressive left wants to destroy image. They want to be in charge of it. Mm-hmm. They want to be in charge of life. They want to be in charge of sexuality. They want to control it, and they suck at it. They just mutilate and bastardize and steal, kill, and destroy. They have made nothing. They may have formed and mutilated, but they've made nothing. Make something out of nothing. This idea of bara, out of nothing, the Hebrew word, it's the only where in any language where it describes out of nothing. And if I said, Apollo, describe for me nothing, you'd say, well, nothing is darkness. You're using the verb in the English language to be, is to be. Nothing is void of something. You can't describe it with the English language. Barach means out of nothing. Nothing. And so the best illustration would be a joke. 3 scientists figured out the genome of man, and they realized they don't need God anymore because they know how to make man out of common dirt. So they take the junior scientist and they go, you go tell God we don't need him anymore. And so he goes to God and he says, hey, we figured out how to make man out of dirt, right out of the genome of man. We don't need you anymore. And God said, really? He says, yeah. He says, we're going to have a contest tomorrow. You're going to make a man and I'm going to make a man. And they said, fine. And in their pride, they got there. And they said, God says, you go first. So the scientists go to get their bucket of dirt and God goes, wait a minute. Get your own dirt. We only form. We don't create out of nothing. We take what God's already created and we can either use it to glorify him or mutilate it to not look like him. If the secular progressive left has its way, have you seen humanity with the purple hair and their breasts being cut off and their sexual organs being mutilated? What they've done to man? And they call that progress.
Healthcare. Thank
you. It's tragic. And they keep the elderly alive with the stem cells of dead babies. so their skin can be softer and more supple. But it doesn't matter how much they shoot into them, you're still going to die. And if you think heaven is this chimera between a machine and man, and you're going to download all of your memories, you're an idiot. That's called hell. It's awful. I don't want that world. I'm going to fight against it for the sake of my neighbor.
Yeah, they try to invent the potion for eternal living, but all they create is just chaos. They try to live in this chaos, and they're not happy.
No.
Bring peace.
The thing they're. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's this song. I have peace in chaos. That doesn't make no sense. That's why when you find God, you watch all the news and you're still hopeful.
Yeah. It says in Thessalonians that man is a trichotomy, a three-part being. It says body, soul, and spirit. In the Greek, it's soma, psyche, and pneuma. The soma is the body, this flesh, it's basic elements of dirt. The psyche is the intellect, the mind, the reason. But the pneuma is the Spirit of God. And the Spirit dictates to the mind what the body will do. Mm-hmm. That's a man operating the way God designed him. For example, the Greeks said it was the highest virtue, the highest good. Your listeners can't see it, but we have a mug, and it's a good mug. And the reason why it's good is it's doing what it was designed to do. It's holding the liquid. Mm-hmm. If it was leaking, it would be bad. The highest virtue is doing that for which you were designed to do. And so you operate in the context of the Spirit of God dictating to the mind what the body will do. When you remove the Spirit of God, which happened in the Garden of Eden, and the Spirit of God departs, man is an intellect and a body driven. And if he doesn't have truth, he's going to take things and debase them and try to operate apart from God. And all it ends up is just death and destruction. We say Christianity is responsible for the greatest atrocities in the world. And I say to the people, what are those? Well, the Inquisition and the Crusades and the Salem witch trials. I go, okay, how many people died in the Salem witch trials? They go, I don't know. In America, very few. And it was stopped by clergy through due process that they found in the scriptures. It continued on in secular Europe, but in America, it stopped. The Inquisition, 100,000 died. 100,000 too many, and that's because the church had the sword and it should never have had the sword. The Crusades, they were defending themselves. But then I reverse it and I turn them, how many have died under secular progressivism? When you consider Hitler and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong and Stalin, billions. They just steal, kill, and destroy. That's it.
So Rob, the last question on our podcast is always the same. Let's have two assumptions with you. Assumption number one is the President of the United States is the most powerful human being on planet Earth. Assumption number two is you become one. You become the President of the US, and you have Secret Service at your disposal. They come to you and say, congratulations, Rob, we love you, you're the President now. We know all the answers in the world. You ask us, we'll give you an honest answer. What would be your first question?
That's a very good question. I've never asked anyone for an answer. I've asked the Lord. They may think they have the answers. They don't. But first thing I would say would be, what are the controls we have on our food and pharma? Who's running that? Let's shut it down.
Let's say they give you this list of 10 companies or 10 last names, right? You as a president, would you expose it to the public?
Absolutely.
You don't fear the chaos?
No.
So people can handle the truth?
Yeah, they always can.
Even if it's harsh?
Mm-hmm. I believe in the capacity of man when given truth.
Rob, thank you for coming. I would like to be a little bit more egoistic if you let me. Would you do me an honor and baptize me?
I'd be blessed to do that. It would be a great honor.
Because the last weekend you were baptizing, but I didn't get the chance to do it.
Yeah.
I would love to do it. And
Let's
especially I would love to do it with you because I know you. I know your values. I've heard you from the pulpit. I had an interaction with you, a conversation.
Yeah.
And you have everything. You have all the values that are very important to me. So lots of kids, grandchildren.
Amen.
And this is very
Apollo, it would
important
be
to
an
me.
honor, especially hearing your testimony. I got chills when you were sharing that with me. God's got a wonderful calling on your life, and your wife too, and your boy. I pray I live long enough to see it all come to fruition. I mean, I'm not super old, but I've got almost 30 years on you. But I'm no spring chicken, and in this season of life where, I'm not physically hindered, but I'm not as strong as I was when I was your age. I'm doing what I'm doing when most people want to retire. I have no interest in that. Retirement's not in the Bible. I'm doing what I'm doing, and it's almost like I'm Elijah, but Apollo, you're Elisha. And Elisha wanted a double portion from Elijah. He wanted to be twice the man. Yours is the generation that's going to see the change. I'm going to fight in the darkness to push it open, and you with the double portion are going to see the generation of change. And that's what excites me. So I'd be honored to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the last part of my story would be this. In 2022, we lived in Spain back then. One day I was just walking outside, and there is this thought in my head: go to the U.S. Because I was always fascinated with America, because I was watching the Hollywood movies right from my childhood. I was always fascinated by this country. I always wanted to come here. And in 2022, I had this idea: come to the U.S. and do podcasts, because I was doing podcasts back in Lithuania since 2015. And I was like, where does this idea come from? What is that? Only now, since I know Jesus Christ, I know the God, that was his
Amen.
That was his idea.
His still small voice.
That's why I'm here, to do the podcast. I love it. God bless you. God bless all your children, all your grandchildren, your wife.
Thank you.
And all the people that come to your marvelous, amazing church. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Apollo. Bless you, brother. I wish the same for you.
Thank you.
All right, buddy.